Hello everyone, this is Doug again. Please bear with me on this topic today. Is going to be is America turning into communism like Russia? And please bear with me, and after 5 or 6 minutes it should get a little interesting. And I want to compare how the United States is compared, economically, financially, militarily, as a government, compared to how it is today with the United States. Where I'm going to get my sources is from the 20th Century and Beyond. Um, Global History is my school book, and this week we're studying the Bolshevik Revolution in Soviet Russia. So I'm gonna jump paragraph to paragraph. So please bear with me. Okay, new economic policy, 1921-1928. That's when it began. Okay, I'll start here. The communists had early instituted a war communism, which had nationalized industrial and land, all but abolished private trade and forced peasants to turn over most of their crops to the state. Under the new economic policy, the state continued to maintain control over major industries, transportation, banking, foreign trade, and most wholesale trade. The new policy now allowed the measure of private enterprise in small industries and retail trade. In addition, the state no longer forcibly requisitioned peasant produce after paying a tax. First mainly in food and later in money, peasants were free to sell what remained on the open market. Economically, the new economic policy was a notable success. By 1928, the total agriculture and industrial production had roughly reached 1913 levels, given the devastation of the economy from 1914 to 1920, World War I, Russian Revolution. This was no small accomplishment. What happened is in March of 1917, Nicholas II, Tsar of Russia, was overthrown by the Bolsheviks and all that. And right around in November, they sued for peace and all that with Germany, but a new leader would rise, and that would be Vladimir Lenin. And he would bring his socialist ideas, Marxist ideas and all that. But now, I am going to be I'm going to be going to another part. The new economic policy years were also ones of social and cultural experimentation. The power of husbands and fathers was curtailed, and the emancipation of women proclaimed. Although sexual equality was not fully achieved, education, job opportunities for women expanded, and the gap between men and women's pay decreased. Either spouse could obtain a divorce, and by 1927, the rate had increased to 1 for every 4 marriages. The government also had mandated maternity leaves and legalized abortions. In the area of religion, it confiscated church land and possessions, and through the educational system and media, inculcated anti-religious and pro-communist propaganda. The state stressed technical, vocational, and adult education, and also had brief experimentation with progressive educational techniques. By 1939, about 81% of the Soviet citizens were literate, compared to 51% in 1926. Okay, now what I'm going to be doing is going to 1928. 1929, which is called really the third revolution, collectivization, and the first 5-year plan. This is what Stalin made a plan, how he was going to run Russia. Okay. The reason Stalin introduced and continued his more radical economic policies are subject to debate, but 5 have been frequently mentioned. More grain. Number 1, more grain was needed to help feed the growing urban population. Peasants were not selling enough grain to the state at the low prices the government was willing to pay. 2, more rapid industrialization, especially in heavy industry, was necessary if the Soviet Union was to become a stronger military power. If in 10 years we do not cover the distance that our other countries took 50 or 100 years to traverse, we will be crushed, Stalin warned. Number 3, the Marxist ideology based socialism on a developed industrial order, and therefore the continued development of the Soviet social state was thought by many on the expansion of Soviet industry. Number 4, both the 5-year plan and collectivization would increase the control of the party over the economy and over the lives of Soviet citizens. 5. If you rejected the new economic policy approach, Stalin would at the same time discredit his remaining major political opponents, who had consistently supported that. With the inauguration in late 1928, the first 5-year plan, the Soviet economy took on the characteristics that would mark for the next 6 decades. Government officials decided what would be produced in the Soviet Union in what quantity. Consumers' desires had relatively little effect. The government followed party orders, as always, established target figures for the next 5 years, designed especially in an increase in metal and chemical production, electricity and petroleum output, new factory construction, and other industrial growth. The government obtained capital for expansion in these areas by squeezing high indirect taxes from its population. The purchasing power of the Soviet citizens declined and fewer consumer goods were available. At the end of 1932, the government claimed that it had already met the goals of the first 5-year plan in a little over 4 years. Although it is impossible to be sure of the exact figures, and hastened meeting production quotas often caused shoddy workmanship, production did increase significantly in some areas. But most reliable estimates agree that iron and steel output went up at least 50% during the first 5-year plan. The output of chemicals, machinery, equipment, fertilizers, petroleum, and electricity increased even more dramatically. New factories, industrial complexes, and cities sprang up, often located far to the interior, away from the vulnerable borders. Although part of this industrial spurt flowed from genuine enthusiasm by some workers for Stalin's bold new plans, increased labor discipline and coercion also increased production. Okay, that's really amazing. The record in agriculture was not impressive. Russian peasants in 1933 produced less food than before collectivization, communism, and the amount of livestock markedly declined. In addition, famine occurred in 1932-1933. The poor record was largely due to peasants' resistance to collectivization and the government's use of force. Stalin was determined to push most peasants in either collective farms or state farms. In the collective, peasants worked the land collectively, and after all obligations, they divided what was left of their produce according to the percentage they had earned by their work. On a state farm, on the other hand, workers received wages directly from the state. Both collectively and state farms were unpopular with the peasants. A few were willing to give up their old ways. Peasants slaughtered their animals rather than turn them over to the collective farms. In response to such resistance, the government killed or sent to Siberia and other parts of the country millions of peasants, often to face premature death and in forced labor camps. Stalin waged war especially on the designated as kulaks, who were supposedly prosperous peasants guilty of hoarding. Actually, almost any peasant who was in trouble with the authorities was apt to be included in that category. No group suffered more than the Ukrainian peasants. Stalin's food policies in Ukraine, and to less extent in other regions, led to millions of additional deaths and famine during the famine of 1932 and 1933. Despite resistance, however, Stalin succeeded in forcing many peasants onto collective or state farms. He granted only one noteworthy concession when he allowed collective peasants to maintain small private garden plots and a few animals. By the end of the first 5-year plan, more than 60% of the cultivated land in Russia was under the control of the collective farms, and about 10% under state farms. In subsequent years, the collectivization continued placing most of the remaining peasants and their produce effectively under the control of the party of the state. And at that time, when Soviet peasants were starving to death, the governments forced them to turn over grain to government agencies, which used it to feed the expanding cities and to add grain reserves and even to export. Um, oh, here's another great one. This is a great one. By 1932, it had changed from an overwhelming agrarian, religious, and traditional empire with an autocratic government monarchy to rapidly industrializing Marxist society. It had official values were its official values were atheist and revolutionary, and the Communist Party and the Soviet government interfered more actively in the lives of the people than that of the old czarist government. Collectivization in particular transformed patterns of work. It increased the use of education and the media as instruments, and propaganda and the use of terror also made it increasingly difficult to ignore or oppose the desires of the authorities. You know, I wanted people to really realize, read this, and I wanted to read it. It's a great book. Is that's how we're changing. The government's getting their hands in the cookie jars. They're like Obama. He's controlling the government. He's trying to take over. Now we got drones that can be flying all over the United States. We got the National Defense Authorization Act, and now these drones they can come over and bomb people's houses and wipe a group of people, and they don't even have to have evidence that this person had was with the Al Qaeda or anything. They don't even need any. All they have to do is suspect. They can lock people up and throw away the key in in Guantanamo Bay and Gitmo Bay and stuff like that. They can just lock away and throw away the key, and these people are not entitled to due process. The government right now is manipulating the money markets, food. They raise taxes on everybody so much, on literally everything, so food prices are higher. And that's why we're seeing gas prices go up, by the way. We've seen gas prices go down December and January, and that is because that was a direct warning. Look at the Baltic Dry Index, that our economy is contracting. We're not shipping, or we're not importing or exporting goods, and each one of them ships use tons and tons and hundreds of tons of fuel to get from the East Coast to Europe or the West Coast to like China and stuff like that. So it's supply and demand. So since we weren't shipping anything overseas and we weren't importing anything, we had a supply of fuel. But the price of gas and everything going up, that's because of we're getting taxed on everything. But the thing is it's about oppressing the people, taking things away. And now these senators are really, really, wow. They can't believe they're supporting Obama with the gun bill, yet they're questioning him about the drones now. They should have read. Most of us, all of us out there, all my subscribers, we are more far intelligent than these politicians. But the worst is yet to come. There's one thing I found in my book this morning, and I'm sorry I couldn't find it earlier, is that when the West hit the Depression, the United States and Europe and all in 1929, when things really went bad here, they actually prospered. They prospered better, communism did, than the United States. But the thing is that the government can control now, like martial law, that he can take over all the stores, gas stations, he can control the economy, the farms, and all this other stuff. We are changing so much now in the economy. Now they want to get rid of the guns. But give me your input, what you feel and what you think on it. Please keep it, pretty clean. I don't like some of that stuff I see in a lot of other channels, what I see in like Alex Jones and stuff like that. But what I read was really great for my school book, and I got to do a real big paper this week, and this would help me. If something would ever happen, we see a financial collapse or whatever's going to happen, if you need a place to come, you can come to my house. Just send me a PM prior. God bless. Take care.